His name, Merlin.
What's going on, knights, magicians, enchantresses, lords, ladies, and everyone in the land of Ambion, and welcome back to the Merlin Weekly Reviews. And we're finally closing out on the two-parter, The Darkest Hour, where we're gonna pick up right where we left off of Merlin seemingly dying. Spoilers, he does not die, because obviously this is The Adventures of Merlin, Season 4, and we have another season to go through, so he's not dead. I'm gonna get that out the way. Merlin does not die, and he then gets dragged back to meet up with Arthur throughout his entire plot thread, after being escorted away by Lancelot to be revived by brook and stream spirits. That is it for the subplot involving, is Merlin going to live or is he going to die? But we're going to be going back into Merlin's whole subplot in this event later. We're going to focus more on the Arthur storyline and the storyline at Camelot, and also Morgana's involvement overall. Firstly, let's discuss Arthur's whole plan in this whole two-parter after the Doraka have been arisen from the spirit realm's whole realm Gina being split open. Arthur's whole plan is to lay down his life for Camelot in the most literal sense, because he feels that if he gives up a lot of himself to save his people, then that's all the gift that he could give as their sit-in king until Uther takes up the throne once again. A nice sentiment, and also a very powerful one as a son to a father, something that I hope to have someday if I ever have sons. But it's also short-sighted because, well, where else would they actually get power from for Camelot if Arthur were to die, since Morgana's still on the run and he does not know if she still has splinter cells in his kingdom. I'm just saying, it's a nice gesture, but it's also short-sighted as a king and as a strategist for your own kingdom to recklessly give your own life so haphazardly, as it were. That's the whole main driving force for him, as he's just trying to go over his final affairs with people, trying to literally tell Merlin when he comes back to just look over Gwen and make sure that she's happy if he's gone. Make sure that Camelot is safe with all of his knights that he's chosen with meticulous care. He's trying to make sure all of these things are well kept. And then we're going to go back into how Camelot / Morgana are faring, where Agravain, the splinter cell that I've just alluded to a little bit from the Arthur rant, is trying to close the city walls to make sure that there are more victims outside of Camelot than there are inside, when and if Morgana becomes the new ruler of Camelot at the event of Arthur's death. However, Guinevere, being the future queen and all, decides to put her foot down and say, "Make sure the people come first! Make sure the people come first!" Agravain's just like, fuck. Alright, fine. I get to be a dick for 1 minute and I can't even let that stay for an entire episode. I'm gonna go cry off in the distance to Morgana. My lady! And then he goes to see Morgana crying like a little bitch, trying to be like, oh yeah, Arthur is totally gonna die. He's totally gonna die. Morgana all of a sudden having her bitch senses kick in like, why are you here so early? I only request you when I want satisfaction, not when I want bitching and moaning. And then he decides to be like, well, Morgana, you see, Guinevere decided to try and talk out against me in front of everyone. Even Gandalf the librarian, who had no speaking lines at all in this episode, trying to make me seem like a little bitch. And he goes spouting this off to Morgana, who, after remembering her vision of Guinevere getting the crown as Queen of Camelot, decides to flip her shit and then has him set up a murder plot that does not work because we still have one other badass in the kingdom while Arthur and Merlin are away. And that is Gaius. No one can ever forget the badass that is Gaius. So, that's basically all that's happening in Camelot, but we're going to finally go back into Merlin's whole subplot in this entire who's gonna die thing for the episode. Now, with Merlin, that hits a lot of fans close to home because Merlin, when he started off on the journey in the very first episode of Merlin, was a very meek and kind of a quiet and unsure child. He didn't want to protect Arthur whatsoever. He didn't care that much about Camelot, and he wanted his magic to be recognized for what it was, rather than just being a defender, a savior, a symbol for all those that want magic to be restored to the land of Ambion as a whole. Now, here we are in the two-parter of Season 4 where we've seen how much that he's grown as a warlock and as a dragon lord in general, commanding wyverns, having John Hurt Dragon come to his rescue for him and Lancelot against the Rakas, and even John Hurt Dragon expressing how much he would miss Merlin if he were to give his life to seal up the realm Jaina that has really spewed out all of these Doraka to kill all of the inhabitants of Ambion and beyond. Because of this, every single tension that's being built up, when it's not a stupid horror line plot thread, are really well crafted. You can literally see the actors, honest to God, kind of trying to make their characters seem nervous and in upheaval over whether or not they will or will not die. So it builds up even more and more to the point where they're finally at the Isle of the Blessed, where it's just Merlin, Arthur, and Lancelot, because he promised Guinevere in the very first part of this two-parter to protect Arthur with his own life if he needed to at all. And throughout the entire two-parter, he's trying to find reasons for Merlin, since he's going so far beyond to save Arthur's life time and time again at the cost of his own life, his identity, his secrets, all of these things. But it finally comes to fruition and to head when Merlin decides to incapacitate Arthur and literally sacrifices himself to the Kailich, only for the Kailich to tell Emrys, not Merlin, Emrys, that he will not leave the land of man anytime soon, as Lancelot walks into the realm Jaina and closes it with his own life force, thus ending the Doraka event for all those at hand. I'll express my feelings about this in a moment, but we're going to finally close up all of these events with a nice bow over everyone returning to Camelot, with Arthur now being reinstated as the fill-in king, and Merlin and Gaius finding out that Agravain is a splinter cell for Morgana, while trying to make up plans about how to be more careful, because Morgana now knows about Merlin's true name as Emrys, and will stop at nothing until he's destroyed, so that she can get her throne back over all of Camelot and Ambion as a whole. Now, as a two-parter, you guys are probably wondering why I label this as probably the worst two-parter in the entirety of Merlin. That is, without a question, the simplest answer I can give you. It's overly rushed to shit on multiple fronts. Like, imagine this as a writer, guys. You're trying to build up the importance of the 4th season. You have no idea if it's your last season to date or if it's going to be the next to last season. So you're trying to build up this entire great story. So what do? Do you make something where it's very well crafted and well handled on paper and even better on screen, or do you just do one or the other? That's a trick question, guys. You do option 1, not option 2. And that's what this whole two-parter was. The Doraka as enemies. Good premise. The idea of losing an important character to the mythos. That's also a good idea. But not for a season opener to reshape the status quo, when the status quo hasn't truly been formulated yet. Now, to specify what I mean, it's not the status quo of the previous 3 seasons. I mean the new status quo of if Arthur's the king, Guinevere is just the girlfriend, and Merlin is the wizard that's still under secrecy, with the new Knights of the Round Table just being shown off in quick flashes. What real status quo do we know from this standpoint? Do we know them as the original characters from the last 3 seasons? Because it has been a giant time skip. We don't know the adventures that they've had beforehand to lead into this. Therefore, it leads to a very rushed and very ill-advised construct to have people automatically attached to something they don't really know for certain on a real impactful level. You feel me? Lancelot dying is not a big problem because if you guys know Arthurian lore, the huge love triangle between Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere have always been either toxic, very adulterous, or just plain stupid, while this interpretation and adaptation actually handled it with enough care and with some nuance that made you actually like all three characters and felt bad when one or the other didn't get Gwen's heart, but saw that they could be actual friends and not interfere with the other's relationship. And that's going to be pissed away later because of this event. Arthur and Merlin having these huge character growth motivations for why they're defending Camelot. Those are good, but not for a season opener. This could have been a better season finale for either this season or the season coming up ahead. Not for season 4 when we still have a huge enough cast that we have to dwindle away into a different obscure faction of who's going to live and who's going to die over the precussion of the series. Not as the opener. And yes, even having Morgana now know that Merlin's true name of Emrys being a true threat is a good thing. That's the only good thing I will say about this two-parter. That and Guinevere being a threat to all the dark paths and actions that are coming into fruition. Those two I'm going to put into the good pile. That's a small pile compared to the huge-ass shit pile that's on the right. Seriously, did no one even think in the writer's room that this would be a good or bad opener? They could have thought of something else entirely, like, I don't know, making the Knights of the Round Table fight the Green Knight to try and instrument that Morgana is serious about this, and that it should have Gawain have a shining moment to be more than a comic relief character, and have him be badass to prove that Arthur's reign will be awesome, but also having Morgana afraid of what Emrys would do because Merlin found some new magic to give Gawain some even playing field stuff. They couldn't have thought of anything from the Arthurian mythos that would have made a lot more sense to make the status quo be established for what's coming up into the later episodes than this? You gotta be fucking kidding me! This is by far the worst season opener yet, and to be fair, guys, this is not the worst pair of episodes yet. These are just two bad episodes from a huge line of episodes that are questionable in execution, as we're gonna go into in episode 3 as of next week. So yeah, my salt levels are rising, and I think I'm having a heart attack. I'll see you guys next week.